Hey YouTubers, this is the Gold Standard Z0924 coming at you with my Royal Rumble 2017 pay-per-view review. Overall, I gotta say I really enjoyed this show. I thought that all the matches on this card delivered. Now, this was the first time in 20 years that this Royal Rumble event was held in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas. So even going into this show, I was really hyped, uh, especially with the Royal Rumble match every year. It's 30 man, it's over the top rope. Winner gets to main event WrestleMania for a World Championship belt. And especially with the brand extension being revived, now you could go after the main titles of which brand, depending on which brand you're wrestling in. Whether it's on Raw, you could be going after the Universal title. Or if you're on SmackDown, you could potentially go after the WWE World title. So the Royal Rumble match, pretty self-explanatory for those that have been watching wrestling for decades, and such as myself. So, like I said, I really enjoyed this show. I wouldn't say it's the greatest Royal Rumble of all time, but there was actually some technical issues I had, especially watching it on the WWE Network. Like some of the matches during the middle of the matches, there's always something going on. Like it's like the audio's out of sync. It's only a couple seconds behind the actual broadcast. Some of the images were pretty pixelated. So there was actually some issues that I had, especially during the first half of the show. But it does kind of get better as the pay-per-view went by. But like I said, it was a pretty good show overall. And you even had some of the undercard matches, including the women's championship belt between Charlotte Flair defending the belt against Bayley for the Universal title, which is a no disqualification match between Roman Reigns and the champion Kevin Owens. Cruiserweight Championship, we have Rich Swann taking on Neville, and the WWE title between John Cena and AJ Styles in a rematch from SummerSlam. But there was actually a kickoff show, which I normally don't really go into too much detail since primarily you don't miss anything anything significant, except that for this exception, however, they did put the Raw Tag Team title belts up for grabs with Sheamus and Cesaro defending the belts against Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. And this features the two referees at ringside, which kind of stems from, I believe, the Go Home Raw to Royal Rumble. And it ended in a pretty surreal fashion. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson ended up defeating Sheamus and Cesaro to become the new Raw Tag Team Champions. So after all these months of them always coming up short, and after opportunity after opportunity of chasing after the tag title belts only to come up short, Gallows and Anderson finally overcome those odds and win their first WWE Championship belt. But without further ado, I just want to kind of tackle on the main card. And the show opened up with the Women's Championship belt, with Charlotte Flair representing Monday Night Raw defends her belt against Bayley. Now, this match was actually a pretty solid match. It's not one of my favorites going into it, but I mean, it was a solid way to open up the main card of the show. But at some point, like I mentioned about the technical issues, it kind of really kind of took away a bit of the excitement of the match. Match went on for a couple minutes, and Charlotte just basically toying around with Bayley and just harassing her, bullying her, and putting some doubt on Bayley. They've been kind of building up in a way where Bayley's came to the WWE because it was her dream. It was her dream to become a pro wrestler. Charlotte Flair is just kind of toying around Bayley and her imaginary dreams and how superficial it is. Charlotte ends up beating Bayley in a pretty sick finish where Charlotte throws Bayley to ringside, but Bayley's hanging on the apron. Charlotte takes the advantage by executing the natural selection to make the successful pin on Bayley to retain the women's title. Charlotte's been on this pay-per-view streak that the announcers have been putting it over or let it be known to the audience that Charlotte, ever since coming to the main roster, has been on a winning streak since she started to appear on WWE TV, or let alone being on pay-per-view. She loses on regular TVs like Monday Night Raw. Like, she can lose matches there, but she's consistently winning matches on pay-per-view. So it's only a matter of time before Charlotte ends up coming back on the receiving end after losing a key important match on free cable television. But at the end of the day, Charlotte gets the last laugh. So just to kind of clarify there. So I'm thinking they're going to continue this feud, maybe heading into WrestleMania. And it wouldn't surprise me if Charlotte ends up losing her first pay-per-view match. I think they might still continue on this feud. And, especially with the women's division, ever since the brand extension had begun, it's like the women's division on Raw has just been very thin. It's like there's hardly any wrestler in that division with a lot of momentum or believability. I mean, you have like Sasha Banks, who had been having series of matches with Charlotte, and even she kind of came up on the receiving end despite winning, kind of like trading back and forth between the women's championship. But yeah, other than that, I mean, you have Bayley at the moment, but besides Sasha and Bayley, there are hardly any credible baby faces when it comes to the women's division on Raw. I mean, you have Alicia Fox, but even she's been kind of focused on being a manager. You had Emma being drafted to Raw, but even they've been kind of still teasing on her to make her re-debut with the new Emelina persona. And they've just been turning that into like the butt of all jokes. Let's see who else. Summer Rae's MIA. Paige was on the Raw roster, but she's been kind of having a falling out with WWE, ever since Alberto Del Rio got fired. And even Paige is just kind of been in limbo. I mean, you hardly ever see her on TV these days other than Total Divas. So other than that, I can't really think of a lot of key important wrestlers that are featured in the women's division, which is really damn shame. And, Sasha is just kind of sour on me so far as a babyface, and there's likely a chance that she might turn heel down the road. There's just a lack of baby faces now the more that I think about it. So if Sasha does turn heel, and even if they even consider putting her back in the women's title contention, it's like, how are they gonna, like, what are they gonna do with, especially having, with Bayley, other than Bayley, is like, who else is gonna serve as another fan favorite in the Raw Women's division? Then we have is the Universal Championship. This was the no disqualification match with Chris Jericho in a shark cage. And this is for the Universal Championship. Now, this was actually a really fun match. Just a lot of heavy use on weapons, and there was actually a really cool spot where Roman Reigns tried to do a Superman punch on Kevin Owens, and he crash padded onto a stack of chairs at ringside. Like, Kevin Owens was trying to do a superplex, but then Roman counters into a Superman punch, and Kevin Owens just kind of collapsed off the turnbuckle and crash landing on the stack of steel chairs. Let's see. There was actually a lot of spots. It's hard to kind of remember each one. There was something where Kevin Owens did a Stone Cold Stunner on Roman Reigns, which kind of caught me by surprise. But Kevin Owens ended up mocking Roman Reigns. Chris Jericho dropped Kevin Owens with a brass knucks that he had while hanging on the shark cage. He drops it down for Kevin Owens. Kevin does the Superman punch, which connects, but even despite that, Roman kicks out. Roman ends up taking the advantage, power bombs Kevin Owens through the announce table. Looks like he's going to win the match once he brought Kevin Owens back into the ring, but just before he could nail the spear on Kevin Owens through the table that's set up by the turnbuckle, Braun Strowman out of nowhere comes out, attacks Roman from behind, nails a running power slam through the table for Kevin Owens to take the pinfall and thus retaining the Universal title. So yeah, definitely really enjoyed that match, and it was kind of very. I mean, especially going the build up, especially with the fact that because Chris Jericho can't interfere in the match because otherwise Kevin Owens would lose the championship to Roman Reigns, if I'm not mistaken. But they did add a no DQ stipulation at the last moment, and it was just kind of very peculiar on their part, especially since Jericho can't interfere, but yet it's no disqualification. So you would think, like, what's the point of even putting Jericho in the shark cage, especially if he can't be disqualified? So it just kind of seemed, like I said, very peculiar. I don't know. It just kind of seems contradictory, but yeah, I definitely really enjoyed this match. Kevin Owens retains the title. Kevin Owens' title reign has just been kind of very uneventful so far, and this is, I mean, I don't mind Kevin Owens. I think he could be a pretty entertaining wrestler, but if it wasn't for Chris Jericho as the manager, I don't know if Kevin Owens' title reign would even be as somewhat tolerable than it probably could have been. I mean, like if his title reign would have been mediocre if Jericho hadn't been serving as Kevin Owens' partner or best friend. And Roman Reigns has been constantly chasing after the main title, especially the Universal title, and it's just like Roman Reigns is like they're really doing all they can to make sure Roman Reigns is still on top. Like he's the ultimate opportunist, like Edge was during his prime, and they're still kind of sticking him in these big title matches or big key important matches, no matter how many times he comes up short. But especially with how the crowd's been receptive on Roman, especially for the past year or so, and WWE's just been kind of still doing all they can to make sure he stays relevant. Something too surprising or something I'm gonna like get all butt hurt or just fume with anger. But for what it was definitely a really great match. And Kevin Owens, like I said, retains the Universal Championship by defeating Roman Reigns. Then we have is the Cruiserweight title match between Rich Swann defending the belt against Neville. Now, basically these two have been best friends for many years. And, Rich Swann was a part of the Cruiserweight Classic. Adrian Neville has been kind of sidelined throughout half of 2016. And ever since they brought back the Cruiserweight division, Neville hasn't really been featured like the first couple weeks, I guess you could say, since they brought the cruiserweight division back on especially on Monday Night Raw. But Neville had been kind of sidelined for a while, so Neville ends up making an unexpected return. It looks like he was going to help Rich Swann. Neville attacks Rich Swann and turning heel in the process. So they end up having this match for the Cruiserweight title. And this was I think this had a lot more to live up to compared to the previous match after what kind of blew away the fans in terms of the excitement of Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens. So they kind of had something, they had to kind of follow up on that. But the match was fine. Wasn't given a lot of time, but Neville ends up defeating Rich Swann to become the new Cruiserweight champion. I'm really digging Neville as a heel. Really try to, add some layer to his character and overall his direction, being quote unquote the nickname the King of Cruiserweights. Because I mean, I know the Cruiserweight division's just been kind of a bust since, especially since they revived it, but it seems like with 205 Live, it seems like they're giving a another chance to really utilize the time to develop some of these new wrestlers, especially with the cruiserweight division. But yeah, so putting the title belt on a wrestler that people are more familiar with, or someone that's been around in the WWE for quite some time. So I thought that was the right move to do. But yeah, the title belt's just been changing hands so many times. I think that's one of the complaints I have. Is just it seems like every month it's like changing hands, and it seems like they're WWE's still trying to kind of figure out how to structure the division, I guess you could say. But I'm very glad that Neville managed to pull out a victory and walk away as the new cruiserweight champion. And then we have is the anticipated rematch from SummerSlam, and this involves the WWE Championship between AJ Styles, the champion, defending the belt against John Cena. Boy, I mean, even from the announcement of Cena and AJ Styles, you knew that some shit was gonna come down. That these two are just gonna not only tear each other apart, but also put on the best performance. Now, there's a lot of reversals going into this match, like John Cena going for an AA, but AJ Styles reverses it. A lot of quick near falls as well. It's just a lot of back and forth. AJ Styles did a calf crusher, like he reversed the calf crusher when John Cena was trying to do a move. And obviously, John Cena, given his motto never give up, he ends up breaking out of the calf crusher. AJ Styles just doing all he can to wear down Cena, but despite that, Cena just kicks out or he escapes a submission hold. John Cena did an electric chair drop. I remember that, which was not a move that he would normally do. It looked like John Cena was gonna win when he tried to do the attitude adjustment from the top turnbuckle. Like you would think that with John Cena successfully hitting the AA from the top rope, that the match would have been over right then and there. But AJ Styles unexpectedly kicked out, so it kind of gave when I was watching that match, it sort of gave me an impression that maybe AJ Styles could possibly put out a victory. But he even pulled out a Styles Clash. And you would think he would have gone from the pin right then and there, but he kind of stalled for a moment. It's like AJ Styles was still kind of fatigued, and he even tried to go to the apron to kind of nail the phenomenal forearm. And when he did that, John Cena kind of got his cue and successfully nails not one, but two attitude adjustments to win his 16th WWE title reign. This match was definitely really a great way to end the trilogy. They had a match at Money in the Bank, which AJ Styles won, and even the SummerSlam match, he also won. And you would think that he would make it three apiece, but John Cena, after failed attempts to get over AJ Styles, finally does overcome the odds and not retain, but win the WWE Championship. Now, this is not any surprise. I think a lot of people predicted that John Cena was gonna walk out as the WWE Champion. Now it's just a question of who he might face at WrestleMania as of the time that I'm uploading this video. And now we get to the 30-man Royal Rumble. It was actually a really good match for most part, up until towards the end of the Rumble, especially when you get to number 30. So, as far as I can backtrack, because I just finished watching the show. So number 1 came out with Big Cass, Colin Cassidy, and number 2 was, I believe it might have been Chris Jericho. So these guys started off the Rumble. And Chris Jericho actually lasted a lot longer, and surprising enough, when I watched it, I thought for sure he got eliminated. But Chris Jericho for a majority of the match was out at ringside, and you would think the referees would even try to consider looking around the ringside just to make sure that there was no unusual circumstances going on, especially with Chris Jericho, who hadn't been eliminated, but he kind of slid back under the ring and just trying to regain his composure. But he was out for like half of the match, so I kind of thought to myself, man, is Chris Jericho gonna win this by like hiding under the ring? So I was kind of surprised that the referees didn't catch him on that. Let's see. Braun Strowman came in pretty early in the match. He was cleaning house and eliminating. I think he might have. I think the announcer said he eliminated 7 wrestlers. But yeah, so Braun Strowman, came off to a pretty good ovation, and he just looked pretty credible going into it. I thought he was going to last for a long while, but turns out that wasn't the case. You had guys like Dean Ambrose, Sami Zayn, Baron Corbin all triple teaming on Braun, and Baron even clotheslining Braun Strowman to send Braun Strowman flying over the ropes and onto the floor to get eliminated. Yeah, so I was thinking like Roman Reigns was gonna like come out and attack Braun Strowman and cost him the elimination because of what happened earlier that night, costing him Roman Reigns the Universal title. But it didn't happen that way. But Braun Strowman ended up getting eliminated. Brock Lesnar actually got booed, which is one of the few rare moments since Survivor Series, I guess you could say. But ever since he came back in 2012, Brock Lesnar had been consistently cheered. But in recent, especially recently, he's been kind of getting the lukewarm reception. And even people were chanting Goldberg, 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 waiting for him to come out, and Brock Lesnar just manhandling everyone that was in the ring. Even Enzo, I remember Enzo came out there. He even tried to confront Brock Lesnar, but even Enzo wasn't credible enough to outsmart Brock Lesnar, and Brock just pretty much eliminated Enzo right then and there. Goldberg came out, big pop, speared as many wrestlers that were in the ring. The New Day were also in the ring together, and Big E was trying to hold on Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston, but then Sheamus and Cesaro eliminated all 3 of them, and Sheamus and Cesaro got their own tactics used against them when Chris Jericho eliminated those 2 wrestlers that I mentioned. You had Undertaker coming out at number 29, which was kind of shocking at first because I thought that he was going to be the last entry to be in the Royal Rumble, kind of like how he was 10 years ago. So I thought that history might repeat itself by having Undertaker come out as the last entrant in the Royal Rumble match, but he was number 29. And then number 30, people were anticipating number 30. It's like, who could it be? I thought for sure it might be a returning Finn Balor who had been sidelined due to an injury. And, he won the Universal title, but he never truly lost it. So you would think that maybe Finn Balor might pop up in the Royal Rumble. I thought it might have been Triple H. A lot of people speculated Samoa Joe. But it turns out that wasn't neither of those 3 wrestlers. Number 30, Roman Reigns comes out as the last person in the Royal Rumble. And crowd boos, as expected. Roman Reigns just goes on the tirade and eliminates a number of wrestlers here and there. Even eliminate The Undertaker, and the crowd just were losing their shit. And I was actually pretty shocked because I thought Undertaker was going to last till the very end, but Undertaker got eliminated. So eventually it came down to, as far as I can remember, it was Roman Reigns, Chris Jericho, Randy Orton, and Bray Wyatt. I think those were the final 4. Yeah, Chris Jericho got eliminated out of the 4 wrestlers that were already in there by that point. So Jericho was the first out of the 4 to get eliminated. Randy Orton eliminates Bray Wyatt, and Roman and Orton were going at it for a bit before Randy eliminates Roman Reigns to win his second Royal Rumble match. Up until the ending of the Royal Rumble match, I thought it was actually a really fun match. I mean, the only thing that kind of put it down was just wasn't a lack of surprises. I think people were already anticipating guys like Brock Lesnar and Goldberg and Undertaker since they were scheduled to participate in the match. I think you had Ty Dillinger coming in as an entrant at number 10 because he was kind of playing up that whole number. And, Jack Gallagher. I think one of my favorite spots was the Jack Gallagher thing, which was just comic relief. Jack Gallagher coming out with his umbrella and even tried to kind of humiliate Chris Jericho. So that was actually a pretty funny moment there. Yeah, so the Royal Rumble match for the most part was really good up until the ending, and how it kind of sucked the air out of people when people were expecting number 30 to be someone like a surprise entrance, but it turns out that it was a wrestler that they've been booing their asses off for a while. A lot of people thought that Roman was going to win this and it would be in like 2015 all over again. But that wasn't the case. Randy Orton ends up eliminating Roman Reigns, wins the 2017 Royal Rumble, and is going to headline WrestleMania for perhaps the WWE Championship. Overall, Royal Rumble 2017, I thought that was a really good show. I wouldn't say it's the greatest of all time, but I definitely had a blast watching this show, and I was definitely really hyped, in the weeks leading into this Rumble. The technical issues that I had, like I discussed earlier in the video, it kind of brought it down. Aside from a couple of off moments, especially with the questionable winner of the Royal Rumble, Randy Orton winning his second Royal Rumble, and Cena winning the WWE title. I think it could be John Cena and Randy Orton at WrestleMania, and one of those matches that has been kind of ran to the ground over the years and kind of lost its magnitude or importance when it comes to those two. Because last time we saw Cena and Orton face each other was also at the Royal Rumble about 3 years ago, and the Pittsburgh crowd just shit all over it, and Cena and Orton just didn't seem to click in that match. Like they were stealing each other's finishers and resorting to other desperate spots that the crowd just didn't really get into. So, I mean, then again, it could be a possibility. There are still two pay-per-views to go. SmackDown, I believe, is holding the Elimination Chamber. And, they've been kind of adding more pay-per-views, even though there's been news reporting that they were going to cut down the amount of pay-per-view events. But it seems like they're adding more, ironically. I mean, now they're bringing back Elimination Chamber. They're keeping Fastlane for, I think, Raw, but it could be vice versa. I'm thinking Elimination Chamber is a SmackDown pay-per-view. But it definitely will be interesting, for better or worse, just to see how the WrestleMania card lines up. So, like I said, Royal Rumble, just very entertaining despite a couple of off moments. But I definitely think it was a show worth checking out. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below. What were some of your favorite matches? What were some of your favorite moments in the Royal Rumble matches? And till then, this is the Gold Standard 0924 signing out.